Of the Jepson Leadership Symposium. My name is Don Forsyth. I have the honor of being the leader of this group, if I can be so bold as to use that word. This group, what brings us all together is we have very short first names, either 3 or 4 letters in our. Actually, no. Our shared focus is we research leadership. Our focus is on leadership as a personal and an interpersonal process. Although we're gathered together as under the rubric of group, probably our interests are much more diverse than that. And so we will deal with all forms of leadership, but primarily focus on it as a personal, interpersonal process, essentially. I'm fearful of saying anything that's going to poison the well, basically, that will turn you against my comrades up here. I'll throw caution to the wind and take the wise advice of the Baptist preacher. This was once a Baptist university. So instead, I will just make 3 points and perhaps end with a prayer. My 3 points are, most people, including the leadership gurus present in this room, they don't actually see groups. My second point is groups, however, hold the secret to the universe. My third point is, therefore, that to understand leadership, you need to see groups, and better yet, you need to understand groups. So point number 1. Think for a minute, what's the greatest insight in the last 100 years into human behavior? What theory generated the most insight, the most understanding of people? Probably each one of us has their own answer, but a good candidate is Sigmund Freud's idea that our behavior is often determined by forces that we are not aware of, unconscious forces in the human mind. But what about the next 100 years? What perspective will tell us the most about human behavior? Well, perhaps Freud was right that there are unrecognized causes of our behavior, but he simply located them in the wrong place. They're located outside of us, in other individuals, in the social world in which we live. All of us are part of a group, influenced by a group substantially, and yet frequently we don't recognize that influence. Leaders in particular, as we examine leadership processes, we tend to focus on leaders as single individuals, their behavior determined by their personalities, by their virtues, by their ethics, and yet we don't recognize that they're part of an intact group. Each one of us is part of dozens of groups, in fact, and to understand any one of us, we have to understand those groups in which we are embedded. So point number 1, we're done with that. Most people, including leadership gurus, don't understand groups. I should mention Westerners. We're mostly Westerners in here. Perhaps we could study more closely the Eastern view of individuals, because they are much more likely to recognize that we're embedded in groups, and that leadership is clearly a group-level process. Point number 2, groups hold the secret to the universe. Groups matter a great deal psychologically, sociologically, politically, culturally, historically, pragmatically. And of course, I'm speaking in hyperbole, but the actual approach would be a multi-level one where we take into account individual characteristics, group-level characteristics, organizational characteristics, the level of the community. But because the group level has been too frequently ignored, I'm just going to keep banging away on that here this morning. But if you look, for example, just one example, recent work on groups, and I do mean recent work on groups. I know we're probably all familiar with the relatively dusty work on groups done many years ago and often featured in books on groups, but there's actually recent research on emerging group processes that's quite interesting. For example, work in evolutionary psychology, anthropology, political science recognizes that human beings have a profound and powerful need to be part of a group, that we feel comfortable even in a group like this, that we are embedded in the group. It satisfies some basic, fundamental human need. But not just any group. Our groups tend to move very quickly from being egalitarian, flat structures into hierarchical structures. In my own research, using a classic tradition in group research, is put individuals in the room without a leader. How quickly will an individual emerge in that context as the leader? probably within a minute, with very little communication, without anyone ever explicitly saying who will lead and who will follow. Status hierarchies emerge very quickly. If you just take a thin slice of group behavior and look at it, the status hierarchy, the differences in who leads and who follows emerges very quickly. You probably worried because I am a groups person that, let's now do a group exercise, shall we? No, but I won't make you do it. But imagine, what I would like to do is I'd like to have this side of the room get organized and attack this side of the room. And you need to defend yourselves against that attack. So as you sit there and think, oh, okay, let's do that. You probably look around the room and think, already, who will lead this group? Who will you rise up and follow when they say, all right, everybody, let's do this? And over here, okay, there it emerges. But it happens very quickly that you're able to organize yourself spontaneously and move forward. I've already got the 3-minute sign. You're in my class. Point number 3. To understand leadership, and better yet, see, and better yet, understand groups. I myself don't actually study leadership. I study people. And people are usually embedded in groups. And those groups generally have leaders. So I end up studying leadership because of my fascination with individuals in groups. We're probably all familiar with the great man theory of leadership. So what I'm proposing is the great groups theory of leadership, if you will. I'm about out of time, so I'll go ahead and do the prayer. My 3 points, just to remind you of them. Most people, including leadership gurus, don't see groups, yet groups hold the secret to the universe. So point 3, to understand leadership, see and understand groups. And now our prayer. May all my groups be well-structured ones, comprised of individuals with the skills and values that match the group's tasks and responsibilities. When I lead, let me remember that my moral choices are not my own to make. I make them on behalf of others who trust me and will help me when I need their moral strength. A leader is never alone. Let me remember that groups hold the secret to the universe, but also keep ever mindful of the group's influence. Madness is the exception in individuals, but the rule in groups. Thank you.